Hi everyone. Sorry we're late. We were nattering. It is Claire's birthday tomorrow. I'm gonna completely embarrass you right now, Claire. And I want lots of cake emojis and fireworks and anything that you can muster. Hi to Ion, Johnny, Doug. Welcome and thank you for coming. Johnny, we were also just talking about your stream, which I need to finish, and Claire's going to catch up on the one about religions that you did with Lauren during the week, and John Baptiste. So happy birthday, Claire. And
thank you very much. Thank you.
For your birthday, you're getting 2 Jaime chapters.
Yay!
How lucky are you?
I was just going to say, I think Johnny's got another stream coming up this week, because I remember thinking, oh yeah, that's on, I think it's tomorrow. I think there's another stream scheduled, so I'm hoping to be able to tune into that or to watch it after, although I do like joining in the live, the live chats if I can. But I shall see. But yes, definitely check out Johnny's channel.
Yeah, definitely. And Ian says happy name day, Claire. Oh my God,
thank you.
You're even getting a flame and a balloon. Just put the two together, Claire. And
lots of cake.
Thank you. So yeah, we have I loved the chapters this week. I really did.
They're just epic, the chapters in this book. Yeah.
Kind of plot light and more conspiracy heavy, right?
Yeah.
Apart from Cat of the Canals, like they seem a bit more kind of conspiracy. Well, that's what I picked up.
There just seems to be a ton of foreshadowing, a ton of stuff in the dialogue that you can say, oh yeah, again, that's where we can see where this theory comes from. That's why we think this, oh right, okay. Jenna came right out and said this, and there's a lot of that. The next few chapters that are coming up, I did look at, because I'm doing the audio, I sort of look at how long the chapters are, how many minutes. And there is, I think, is it next week is the last group of chapters?
I think we've 2 weeks left.
We've got 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the last week
is 6 chapters, and that's a hefty week.
It is, but also there is a Elaine chapter, a Sansa chapter, that, according to how long the minutes are, is the longest chapter so far yet in the series.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How long is it?
It's like, usually, on average, the chapters, when the minutes, how long they are read by Roy Trees, they're roughly, I'd say, on average, about 40 minutes, 42 minutes. If you get a long chapter, that's like 55 minutes, like almost up to the hour. There's one that's 79 minutes. The Elaine chapter, the last Sansa chapter, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, I can't remember it being that.
I can't remember it being that detailed, or actually really what goes on in that chapter. Isn't that where they decide? Anyway, we'll find out. It's funny, but it's a long chapter.
There are some chapters that are so short. Like, if you think of the Ned 10 from Game of Thrones, that there's a Bran chapter in Game of Thrones, that the one where he wakes up, that's quite short. There are a few like short and sweet chapters that there are a couple of Arya chapters in Clash, or in
there are some that are like 24 minutes long, 20, that not very often, but some chapters that are a third of the size of this whopping big Sansa chapter at the end of Feast. So
I wonder, have they as the books went on, did he or the people around him get less like rigid with the editing? Because sometimes, especially in the Jaime chapters, there's so much going on in the background, and there's so many characters and names and details being thrown at you. You're wondering, is all of this going to matter in the end? Is he going to tie all of this up? There's so much going on, so it's
you've got to pay attention to it. Well, I suppose the question is, when the author pays specific attention and time and detail to what seems like something fairly insignificant, like the difference between whores and courtesans, oh my God, we get a huge backstory and explanation about that, to the point where you think, is this significant? Is this going to come up later on? Is there a hidden courtesan who is, who is the Black Pearl or whatever? Later on we'll get to that. But in terms of the writing, is it because, are we looking at this in such detail because there is some significance, or is this vanity of the author just wanting to kind of like, oh, I'm going to really kind of describe this particular thing, and it means nothing, it's meaningless, and we just spent 20 minutes knowing everything there is to know about the history and the lineage of the Black Pearl. So it's difficult, isn't it, to know what you should retain, because it's vast, and it's
the cat chapter in particular
hefty.
is one of those chapters where you're like, whoa,
yeah.
And I'm wearing my Cat of the Canals t-shirt in honor of Cat of the Canals, because we are discussing all the way from Jaime 4 to Cat of the Canals today. So that's 30-34. And next week we'll be looking at Sam 4 to Cersei 9. And I say this every week. Next week is Maggie the Frog, right? I thought it was this week. I thought it was last week. We're getting it soon. We're getting there.
We'll get it soon.
So should we jump into Jaime 4?
Yeah.
And we're in the land of Dari. I feel like these two chapters for me expose, the more I got into it this week in particular, and the more I kind of ran it over in my head, it exposes something that I don't think is talked about a lot in the fandom, but the Grand Riverlands conspiracy. And I feel there is a conspiracy in the Riverlands because politically it's so unstable, socially, morally it's so unstable, and now religious, like in terms of its religious nature, it's really unstable. So and I feel like, I wondered, the Daries were Targ loyalists. They turned reluctantly towards Baratheon. We had that chapter a few weeks ago where they were naming out all the lands, or all the houses that were loyal to the Targaryens, and Dari was definitely a big one. I feel like, it feels to me like they're fanning the flames of not just the Sparrows, but maybe R'hllor as well, and trying to create this religious uncertainty among, I guess, fickle religious folk, if you like, or the maybe the populace who are prone to be converted one way or another, depending on where they see power residing. And I wonder, are they doing this in an effort to, if Dany comes back with dragons, they'll be ultimately converted to her, so that they're testing the waters almost with religion, so that when their magical family that they love comes back, the people will automatically turn there. I don't know. It sounds better in my head than it does out loud, but it feels like they are fanning the flames here to all sorts of unrest. I don't know how you felt about the Dari people.
Well, I think they're just absolutely astounded that they've been given Lancel, and Lancel clearly can't protect them.
No.
So they're extremely vulnerable. And I think,
Lancel
again,
can't eat a dinner, let alone protect anyone.
Yeah. And I think in that situation, you would get on your knees and worship whichever god is, I mean, they are, what's he called? Crakehall offers to stay behind or go back after they've sorted out the Riverlands and protect the Dari castle. But I think all it showed really is that Lancel's a bit useless in this situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, he is married to one of the most promiscuous women in the land.
Yeah.
Who tries to get off with Jaime by caressing his golden hand like he feels it or something. But, yeah. I don't know. There's something not quite right here. I feel even Jaime feels uneasy. Certain things that run through his head, it makes him feel uneasy. There's a whole, in hindsight, reading these chapters with Jaime, and I must admit, the first time I read through them, I was like, oh God, there's so much going on. I'm not really sure if any of this is relevant. And between these two chapters, especially, you can feel Lady Stoneheart haunting him. You can feel all of this stuff kind of bubbling up. I mean, this is also the chapter where he finds out that Cersei has rearms the Faith Militant, and he kind of just kind of overlooks it until Auntie Jenna gets involved in the next chapter. Yeah, the whole the whole Derry clan, I think, are completely suspect. I don't. He later on in the next chapter, he thinks Kevin has left because of the incest, but I wonder, is there more to it than that? Than what he's. I don't know if it's just the incest that has Kevin thinking strangely at this time. Maybe Lancel. I don't know. Do you think Lancel really is committed to this religion?
I think he is. He's just horrified at himself, isn't he? All he ever wanted, and again, it's that, you know, the young squire's fantasy of being the most amazing knight ever. All he wanted, and again, you get this from Jaime. Jaime wanted to, you know, was enamored by the Blackfish. Lancel was completely enamored by Jaime, to the point where he wanted to be Jaime. He would stand in Jaime's place, and I think he's just, this is his way of showing that, you know, it's like some sort of self-harm. That's what he's doing. It's like a punishment, but in a very twisted, weird logic kind of way. But it makes sense to him, and that's what he's committed himself to now for the rest of his life. And later on, I think it is Jenna again later on that says, well, you know, it's kind of similar in a way. He's committed himself to the High Septon, very similar to how you committed yourself to protecting the king and being in the King's Guard. So the way Kevin's feeling, like super depressed and just like, I'm tired, I've had enough, fuck you all, I'm out of here, is kind of similar to how Tywin must have felt when Jaime joined the King's Guard, you know.
Yeah. Hi Mackenzie in the chat. And Connie says the Darrys had Targaryen tapestries taken down when Robert came through in his travels, as I think Tyrion or Jaime had taken note of it. Yeah, I remember that. I think it was Tyrion took note of that. And Littlefinger has those tapestries now, I believe. Is that right? I think Littlefinger has those. So,
or they're being sent to him.
Yeah, there's something in the tapestries. You've talked about that before, Claire, as well. The Darrys come up in every book, I believe. So there's something important happening here.
They're an old First Men family.
Yeah.
The Darrys. They're an ancient house. It's quite interesting that we get another reference to somebody being from, you know, the heir or the daughter of the heir of an ancient house, who's the waif over in the House of Black and White. So yes, there's you know, these old ancient families like the Royces and the Darrys, and they're all kind of like, well, first of all, they're all rooted in First Men. You know, they're related to the First Men, but you know, I think they've got really interesting, unique histories, you know, individual to them. So
yeah, it's funny because I feel like if there is a grand Riverlands conspiracy, it's because where power resides in the Riverlands isn't as decided as it is in other areas of Westeros. Like in the Vale, it's quite clearly the Eyrie, right?
Yeah.
In the Westerlands, Casterly Rock. You know, then you've got Highgarden. It's very clear.
Winterfell in the north, but
yeah,
no. If Harrenhal is supposed to be like the seat of power in the Riverlands, it's cursed for a start. Nobody wants it, so there's lots of different layers to actually where are people's allegiances.
The Freys have a good claim. You know, they've got the crossing. River Run obviously has a great claim there. Although I'm not. It seems as if when we get into Jaime's chapter 5, that that has completely been taken away from River Run now. Then you've got the Darrys here who hold a lot of sway with other houses in the Riverlands, and the fact that they could even get a Lannister like Lancel shows that there's something going on here. I mean, I'll get into your Illuminati conspiracy in chapter 5 because I think it comes up. But yeah, there's. I know for a lot of people, I think you're included in this, that the God's eyes where the battle between the men and the others will go down.
Yeah.
For me, I think a deciding battle between men will go down in the Riverlands. I think there's still, I mean, I'm not sure if it's in this chapter or the next chapter, but there's still talk of Robb Stark has forces still out around the Riverlands. There's still families going around the Riverlands. So it's still very, very turbulent. And it's funny when you get to the Canals chapter and they're like, there's no war. What are you talking about? Everything's fine. Like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I guess this is he hears about Lady Stoneheart in this chapter for the first time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of hearsay actually. So we hear about Lady Stoneheart and the wolves, and we also hear about this story about the hound. And even Jaime's like, hang on a minute, that doesn't sound like Sandor Clegane. You know, what you're describing that he's doing, like completely wrecking salt pans and just like raping people left, right, and centre. That's whoever that is. It just doesn't sound like Sandor Clegane. So he's already he's you know, he's got an intuition. Jaime, definitely. He's not stupid. He does piece things together. It's almost like he dismisses himself sometimes. You know, he doesn't. Yeah.
Salt pans comes up again and again in these chapters, particularly. It makes me wonder: is there something else going on with salt pans? Arya was on her way there. Brienne was on her way there. There was a mistaken identity. They couldn't get a boat, and they blamed the Hound for this. But the guys that actually raped and pillaged couldn't get a boat, but the Lord wouldn't come out of his castle to give them a boat or come down and help the people. And there's something a bit strange about salt pans, and I wonder will it come up again in terms of maybe it foreshadows something similar in the future that we'll actually eyewitness, because it's very similar to way back in the Game of Thrones when Ned hears from the people talking about Lannister men raping and pillaging through the Riverlands, and they blame the mountain, but it's a little bit, the evidence is uneven, and they say nobody survived and yet there's eyewitnesses, and it doesn't really make sense. Salt pans we get a lot more, and it clearly happened, but again there's lots of misinformation. And again I wondered, since there's a Clegane being blamed here, and I know Preston Jacobs questions this as well, whether the mountain was actually innocent of those crimes. He's guilty of a lot, but was innocent of the crimes that Ned initially sent Dondarrion after. And then we have the Hound maybe being innocent. Well, he is innocent of the salt pans thing. But I'm wondering, will something else come up? Because it's a common theme with Jaime in this chapter and the next chapter. Misinformation, how stories get out there, and when he meets his cousin.
And just that is being born a Clegane. Yeah. Just being born a Clegane, is that a crime these days?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it just makes me wonder, because Jaime with his cousin later on, well, we'll get into it later, but he thinks to himself, how do these stories get started? Because the story is that Cat took his hand off. And yeah, he spins a story about Cleas Frey to his aunt later on. It's like, well, this is how stories get started. You know, you've just created this legend there, Cleas Frey. I guess this is the big thing in this chapter is this is the end of Cersei and Jaime, right? From Jaime's point of view.
Yeah.
Because he gets the truth from Lancel. And now Cersei is now a Kingslayer too, so they are completely divided, but also they've never been more alike.
Yes, that's true. But there's certain things about Jaime's character that just shine through in this chapter. Like the way that he has to, it's like he has to have a maid to save. You know, there has to be something, and if there is an opportunity to save a maid, he's in there. So like the way that he kind of saves Pia, who sounds like she's had a dreadful time being passed around through all the guards, and she's had her face smashed in and everything, and he kind of, you know, he basically saves her from that.
And
Although
he saves her and immediately hands her to his
to his squire, yeah. But I mean, he removes the horrific circumstances that she's facing at that time, but also he does think about women other than Cersei. I know it seems like he can't get over this Cersei thing, but actually he does. You know, there are occasions where he does think about other women. And there's some real nice little nuggets in here, like when they're talking about the wolves and packs of wolves roaming the Riverlands, so fierce and fearsome that they've lost all sense of fear of men completely. And then you've got over in Braavos, in the Cat of the Canals chapter, Darian's taken out, so she's lost all, you know, that losing fear of men manifests itself in Arya's chapter. There was something about the Crannog men here.
The Crannog men.
Yeah, whether or not the reeds, because all this hearsay Jaime hears about Lady Stoneheart and that she's leading this band of outlaws round about near where the Crannog men are. So they're all hidden, basically. We know that the reeds, their kind of, you know, their stronghold moves around and nobody can really find it. But also she's last sighted in that kind of location and no one can find her in these outlaws, and they're hidden as well, which made me think, is there a link there? Like, are they working together somehow, the Crannog men and the band of outlaws, you know, the Brotherhood Without Banners, led by Lady Stoneheart, is Howland Reed there? Has he recognised who Cat is? Is he like, you know, is he kind of fulfilling some honour to Ned by joining up forces with Lady Stoneheart? I don't know.
Certainly, they're not like this disorganized bunch of vigilantes. They are, like, we'll find out again in the next chapter. We find out that they're sending fire signals to one another, potentially, and taking out Lannisters and Freys covertly and with a lot of skill. Considering there's, you know, hundreds, maybe thousands of people, skilled soldiers in the area, they seem to be getting away with murdering and taking out these people quite a lot of success. So yeah, there's every chance they could be getting help. And at this stage in the series, many years into this conflict, you need people who you need access. If you're going to be successful, you need access to men who are unblooded. Okay, so there are very few. You've got the Crannog men. You've got the some men in Highgarden, right? Willis has those men down in Highgarden, which we'll talk about in Cersei's chapter, and the Knights of the Vale. There aren't a lot of armies at this stage left that are that fresh and ready and can fight. So it would make sense if there's some sort of connections going on there. Connie has some great comments here. I think the White Walkers, oops, gone too fast. I think the White Walkers will go after God's Eye, like Euron will take Old Town and the Citadel. Yes, they're looking for something. Yeah, I agree, Connie. And no banners to play, no definite info except a huge large man in the story to Ned. Yeah, I think we talked about that when we looked at that in A Game of Thrones. It was a very dodgy set of evidence that they presented Ned with, and he was just in pain, I think, and looking for someone to blame. John kind of does the same thing later on himself when he's in pain. And Connie says, someone remarked that the outlaws hide in the with frog eaters because they know no one will go in there. with their blow dart, cowardly poisons, obviously a soldier's words. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so they're being hidden.
Yeah.
They're being hidden, but it's whether or not they are using that as their own defense, or whether or not they're in league with the Crannogmen, and that there's more of an organized defense going on there.
One of my favorite moments is when the Veil shows up in the show.
Yeah,
it's one of those moments that every time I see it, I get goosebumps. It's like I can't wait for something like that to happen in books with, you know, either the Crannogmen or something like that. And hi to Sunny and Bubba as well in the chat, and Dog is there too. So yeah, so what? Anything else then from Jaime for you?
When they talk about there being room for about 1,000 men at Darry, I can't. It just comes up time, and it hits me in the face every single time. I mean, it's the very first word in Cersei's chapter when Margaret, later on when Margaret, it comes up all the time, and there has to be. I'm trying to figure out why, because it cannot be. It can't be there for just the reason that it means a figure that means many. It's just illustrating it, because you would use it's just repeated over and over and over again, but it's in there anyway. It's in there.
What are the implications then for Jaime from this point on that Tyrion didn't lie to him? That this is all true. Well, I mean, I'm thinking like what we know at the end of this book, when you know, when he is, or at the end, like going into Winds, when we know that he is going to be bought and probably presented to Lady Stoneheart. Is there going to be some connection to the fact that at that stage he'll so hate Cersei that he'll be able to maybe sell her on taking Cersei, or he'll promise to go and kill Cersei for Lady Stoneheart? I'm trying to think of it, because Kat also realized just before she died, she realized, oh, Tyrion didn't lie. And it's just the two of them find out too late that Tyrion didn't lie.
But I do think that there'll be lots of things like that that are part of that bittersweet aspect to it. There's every possibility in my mind that Tyrion and Jaime will never ever see each other again.
Oh, that is bittersweet.
But they will have certain memories of each other, and constantly wondering whether or not, is that the truth when he said that? That clearly was the truth. So did he mean when he said that other thing, was that really true? So that I think is going to be, that's how they think of each other, is, you know, was that true? Is the love that I have for my brother genuine? Would he do that? You know, would he do this thing for me? But I don't think they, you know, there's every chance that they won't see each other again.
If Jaime ends up dying for Tyrion, and I do think Jaime will end up doing some great act of sacrifice, that as he does it, he knows he'll die. He'll also know that he'll die without anyone knowing how much of a hero he is. Whatever act of sacrifice, I feel like it's going to happen, and that could play into the fact that Tyrion will know Jaime died, but not know that how much Jaime loved him, maybe, or something. That he'll not know. He won't know. I mean, Tyrion hates Jaime right now, but I think that could change. But, yeah.
The question here from Connie that's quite interesting. Do you think upon seeing Jaime's face, Stoneheart will be jarred to remember Bran?
To remember Bran?
See, I think there'll be a physical. When Lady Stoneheart sees Jaime, and I think there's no doubt there will be a confrontation there. Jaime, Brienne, and Stoneheart. There will be a confrontation, and there will be a reaction from Stoneheart. There will be some sort of physical, visceral reaction. But for me, Stoneheart is more of is a symbolic character. I don't think she's going to be able to, well, she can't communicate. She's more of a kind of physical manifestation of vengeance itself. So I don't know whether or not it would even be meaningful for her to have any kind of knee-jerk reaction that makes her think, oh, he's the one that tried to kill Bran, and now I remember, and this, you know, and it triggers something in her. I think it's more that she is just this symbolic figurehead, if you like, for revenge.
Kat didn't know that. Kat didn't know that he threw Bran out the window, did he? Did she for sure?
No. Does she? I don't think she ever. Does she get to find out? No. He admits to. Doesn't he admit to it?
I mean, Kat. Yeah, but only to Cersei. Should she let him go? Kat let Jaime go.
At that time, though, did he confess that he'd
no, because
the things we do for love?
No,
wasn't that Kat that he...
No, that was Cersei. I don't think he, because I think she still. I'm totally now. See.
Oh, Connie, thanks for this question.
Now we do another reread, Connie. Thanks a lot. I don't think so. I don't think she ever would have let him go if she knew that he actually did. Did he tell her in the cell? God, I don't remember that at all.
Only in the show, or did he confess in the cells at River? I think he did. I think he did. Catherine thinks it was Cersei.
I can't remember. I thought it was just with Cersei, because there was the whole thing. Because she was really only questioning him about the cat's paw in the cells, and he convinces her that she's wrong. I don't know if she convinced.
Isn't it from the reader's perspective? I seem to remember that at the end of that chapter, she's got Brienne there, and it's like she shouts for Brienne, and you think, oh my God, she's going to get. There's that jeopardy.
Maybe
because he's just basically said, vows, these vows, whatever, the things you do for love, and he's kind of, maybe if he didn't say it directly, he can, in a roundabout kind of way, admits that he did do that. I mean, he is, in a way, he is fairly, he but can be quite, they have a very honest, cards on the table conversation in those cells.
But going back to Connie's question, she does let him go, even whether he told her or not, is kind of, even if he did, even if she does see him, I don't know why remembering Bran would be the thing that would, like, I presume she already asks Brienne to bring Jaime to her, already remembering Bran. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think, in answer to the question, I think she will have a massive reaction, but I don't think it will necessarily be related to Bran.
I think she will make him. I think she will try and convince him to go and kill Cersei. I think that's what it will be. Or, I mean, maybe she could send him north to try and find Bran.
Yeah, another mission, possibly.
Yeah. I don't know if that would be satisfying narrative-wise, because do we really need another Jaime journey? We've had a few of them. But yeah, I don't know. I already forget things. Terrible. So anything else then from Jaime 4?
No.
Okay,
nope, that's it.
Oh yes, Dog says that of course when she was killed, it was said Jaime Lannister sends his regards. That's that's what's said to her as she's being killed. So that's true, Dog, for sure. So we have Brienne 6, and this is the famous Quiet Isle chapter. It's a beautiful chapter. It feels like one of those kind of short story type chapters for me. The hero's quest. She finally realizes that she's had the wrong scent all the time, and Yeah, I mean, I guess the big question out of this is the Hound, the Gravedigger.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems, again, reading it for the umpteenth time, that it's pretty obvious. It's
Yeah.
pretty. You'd have to mount a pretty good argument for him not being the Hound. There's everything there about, the wound that he's got, the stranger in the driftwood, the stranger in the stables, just everything about how he's told that he's dead. He's not really described as being dead, but at rest. So there's just, I just take it as an absolute given that this is definitely
And
Sandor
technically,
again.
the Hound is dead. The helm is gone. I'm not sure if I buy his story about leaving the helm on the grave and then it was robbed.
Yeah.
That would have. I'm not sure about this. The only reason I say that is they go. He's pretty convinced that they're quite safe in the Quiet Isle. I'm not so sure about that, because if things are getting robbed in the Quiet Isle or near the Quiet Isle, that suggests that maybe they're not that safe. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure about the helm on the grave. If he is alive, then how did the helm end up at Salt Pans with somebody raping and pillaging?
They just picked it up on the
Yeah.
presumption they just picked it up on the road, but it just so happened to fall into the hands of Rorge or whoever, one of the Mountain's men. Yeah.
That means that the elder brother is kind of, he's really only using the story of the helm, and this, I guess, just to clear the Hound more than anything else. He doesn't really know what happened to the helm, maybe.
Yeah.
My other question is, and I think it's a bigger question maybe, who is the elder brother? We know that he fought for Rhaegar, at least that's what he says.
Yeah.
Should we know who he is? Do you know
Yes,
who
we
he
should.
is?
We should. He was on the Trident, and this is his second life. So who is this guy? He's one of Rhaegar's men, absolutely, without question. He looks like a fighter, not a healer. He looks completely out of place where he is. But this is his, he's adopted this. This is same as Sandor will. When it comes to just going back to the Hound very briefly, I don't think the question isn't the question isn't, is this the Hound? I think that's a given. The question is, will Sandor ever leave the Quiet Isle? Will he become like the elder brother, where it's like, here's somebody with a pretty significant history who's decided to leave all that behind and adopt this lifestyle where he has this second life, because that just shits all over any potential for like Clegane Bowl or the Hound come swooping in and there being any kind of like Sansa romantic happy ending for the Hound and Sansa. And just like, I think that there's a big part of me as a reader, and having some kind of like, this young boy had such a traumatic life, just leave him now, leave him where he is, let him just potter around, just leave him and let him heal, and don't expect him to come back and like save the day and be the hero, and you just leave him. So I hope, I don't know what people think about that. Will Sandor ever leave the Quiet Isle? Is he just there on a hiatus, or
My hunch is he'll have to, because I think whoever the elder brother is, do you know? Because I have no idea who he is exactly. I have no idea.
I think he's probably a Kingsguard.
So
I
we're
think
missing one for sure. Yeah.
But I don't know which. I don't know who. I don't know which one. I think he's quite as likely to be.
Was it a Darry or a? Was it a Darry or a Connington or someone? I can't remember. There was somebody that died at the Trident for sure with Rhaegar, and I can't remember who it was. I looked it up before. I forgot already. But I think we will see the Hound again. I agree with you. I don't mind if he stays at rest, but I think the elder brother is wrong. When Brienne spills her kind of personal story, he says, "Just go home live out your life. It'll be nice. Now, the question is, knowing Brienne as we do, can Brienne ever go home without fulfilling her duty? And I think the answer is no.
No.
And if the answer is no for her, I think the answer is no for the Hound as well. He has too much unresolved stuff with his brother. I don't know if he can ever fully get over that.
No. I think it'd be kind of cheap in a way. Although I get the whole hype of Clegane Bowl and everything, I do think that it wouldn't necessarily serve.
I don't necessarily
anything.
want Clegane Bowl, but I think we'll see him. It could be that he'll come back into Arya's life in some way. I feel like the show may have already given us a clue as to what will happen, that he will avenge whatever happens on the Quiet Isle. That he'll be put in a position, because there's too many suggestions here. Oh, we're safe here. Nobody touches us. There's like there's too much of that. So I feel like something bad is going to happen here, and it could even be in a prologue. We might even get, like, you know, in A Dream for Spring, like
Quiet Isle being ransacked.
This could be, you know, Hobbiton. You know, the Quiet Isle could be Hobbiton, where you're going to get this awful ransacking of it, and these innocent people are going to be completely slaughtered. I don't know. I mean, Brienne breaks my heart in this chapter.
Yeah.
The way she's just looking for somebody to talk to, and she just finds this guy who's really nice, and he's willing to listen, and she just pours out, and we find out about her older brother who died, and it feels like she's almost trying to be him in a way. I want to meet her parents, because I feel like she feels like she's let them down, but they sound to me like they're quite decent parents.
Proud of her.
Compared to some of the parents we see. It's really, there's no way she could have been Tywin Lannister's daughter. He would never have tolerated her desire to be a fighter. In fact, I mean, with the exception of maybe Howland Reed and Ned Stark, maybe Robert Baratheon, who knows? But I don't, or Stannis maybe, but I don't think there are very many fathers who would allow Brienne to be who she is, which is another reason why she can't go home, because she knows that.
I think I've come to terms with the fact that, despite Brienne being one of my favourite characters, I think she will have what her character unfortunately needs, which is a heroic end. And I think it's foreshadowed really strongly here at the end of this chapter, where she says, I promised to find her. I promised Jaime, or die in the attempt. And I think, unfortunately, she is going to die in the attempt. And she won't ever go back to, to a home.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if it ends up being someone we love that ends up killing her as well. Thanks, Connie. Yes, of course her mother is dead. I meant to say I want to meet her father. Connie says that the elder brother, she likes how he describes how some of Rhaegar's rubies have drifted to
well, I was going to ask you about this. This is the other huge thing that comes up in the dialogue in this chapter with the elder brother. He talks about many strange and wondrous things are pushed towards us. So he talks about silver cups, rusted helms, rubies, and shining swords. So obviously the rubies jump out there, washed up rubies from the near the trident. So things just drift, like driftwood, things just drift and get washed up in this area. But what is the shining swords?
Yeah.
Plural?
Do you think they have a special sword with them?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, I mean, you've got to look at which ones are missing. I know everybody talks about Dark Sister and where that will end up.
Yeah. George confirmed that's with
But I don't know, maybe Brienne could end up being... I mean, I don't know, I'd quite like her to turn into a real, like, badass, actually. I don't think she ever will. But, yeah, there's so Shining Sword, maybe that's intended for the Hound to defend the Quiet Isle if it gets ransacked. But I think there is a significant sword there.
Whoever, I mean, if something happens on the Quiet Isle, and it turns out that the Hound ends up going on another vengeance. I mean, vengeance and this part of Westeros seems to be synonymous. It would be interesting if he turned up somewhere unexpectedly with a sword that he's going to use for vengeance for sure.
What sword did Rhaegar wield at the Trident? Was it a sword, or was it? I know Robert had his warhammer.
He had a harp.
Yeah, a nuclear harp.
Yeah.
There's a significant sword there. He's definitely, the elder brother is definitely a very significant member of Rhaegar's, little band of Kingsguard, and he has sworn never to kill again. So this is his second life. For me, that question remains the most important one. What will Sandor ever leave? Will he, or will he just, or maybe that's the last we ever hear of him? Were you just left with that concept of, wow, was that the Hound? Certainly sounds like it. Well, maybe that's the last we ever hear.
It's possible that we could get a prologue or an epilogue from the elder brother's point of view. That would be really interesting, going into Dream or Leaving Winds, where he tells us if rubies are code for Rhaegar, Connie, or he tells us if, that this is the Hound, and it would be interesting if the Hound hears his dying words, and if the elder brother could have saved his own life but doesn't because he's promised not to kill.
There's loads of Rhaegar references here at the feast. Somebody's playing the high harp. There's the mention about the trident. There's just the description of this guy, the physical description of him as he sounds like a warrior, a fighter.
There's no question that the elder brother could be Rhaegar, is there? People would recognize him,
right? I mean, you can go down the road of like rubies and glamours and Melisandre, and it's all of it is a possibility. You can't discount any of it, really.
I feel like Rhaegar is dead, so.
Yeah, I do. I feel like Rhaegar is dead, but he is just as plausible that the elder brother is Rhaegar as Mance is Rhaegar.
Yeah.
And that's quite a popular theory. So it's a possibility.
Yeah. So anything else then for Brienne 6?
Just that I think that I promised Jaime or I'd die in the attempt. Just unfortunately for me, that's what sealed Brienne's fate. And yeah, another bittersweet element. I think there's lots of bittersweet foreshadowing and little nuggets that are left in these chapters.
Also, if you look back on the history of POVs that have died, they've each had a cliffhanger moment where you think they're dead at the end of a previous chapter, and they survived it, and then they kind of die in like a really shocking way. Ned had that. Rob wasn't a POV, but I do feel the same about Brienne, unfortunately. Although there is also evidence that she could end up becoming a silent sister. There's evidence that she could end up, because there's a lot of people telling her to go away and be quiet, kind of all the time. So there's every chance. Yeah. So then we're into Cersei. Oh my God, this chapter. Oh God, she's so.
This is the mega bitch off, isn't it, between Cersei and Marjorie? Oh, just that.
But George just plays with your emotions at this chapter. I mean, we get an insight
But
into Robert
he's
Baratheon that we
very
never had.
good. He's very good, again, from that female character perspective of the scheming and the bitching and the just bubbling under the surface of that passive aggressive approach that Cersei and Marjorie, at any minute you're expecting them to just like pull each other's hair or smack each other in the face, and it's just the way he writes that, like the interaction between them and the dialogue between them, that rocks. Sorry, Your Grace, did you just say rocks when she's talking about the shit? She's just, there is something quite poetic about how shitty and nasty Cersei can be sometimes. The way that he writes how, and again, she thinks she's being super, super clever, and she also thinks about, she thinks about what she would have done, that she thinks her father would have done. Like, for example, when she's talking about the Ironborn, and she says, she talks about mistake, you know, Tywin wouldn't have let the Ironborn survive. That wouldn't have been, you know, my father wouldn't have allowed that to continue. It was you know, it was a mistake. So like, for example, Robert kind of let them off the hook. Tywin wouldn't have done that. And it's like, Cersei, how do you know what your father would have done and not done? And she seems really quite convinced of that she's as good as her father, and that she knows what her father would have done in certain situations. And I just think she's so way off.
I mean, she thinks
this, yeah.
She thinks she's better than him, I think, at times. But more importantly, that she's better than Robert.
Oh yeah. She's constantly self-congratulating about how, oh, I've just dealt with that better than Robert would have done, and that with better Robert wouldn't have even got out of bed. This is it. This is the chapter that I've been talking about for such a long time, about that dynamic between Cersei and Robert. I mean, we'll get to that later on, but this is that chapter.
I mean, comparing Robert and Cersei is like comparing constipation and diarrhea. Neither are good. Like, it's all shit. And it's just the fact that she's, the interesting thing is when they have this kind of interaction about the shields being attacked and all that kind of thing, and afterwards she's congratulating herself in her own mind, and she laughs out loud, and even she recognizes that Pycelle is really disturbed by that. And remember, Pycelle already watched one king lose his mind, and now look how quickly Cersei's losing her mind, and he's just like going, oh shit.
But she, even though she recognizes that, she immediately dismisses it as he's way past his sell-by date. He just needs to, all he's ever doing is complaining and bitching and warning me about things that are going to, you see, he's just completely overused his significance in any way, shape or form. She's almost like, she's you know, she's kind of like just being mean to Pycelle, which is easily done, granted, but she's oh, this is so complex for me, this chapter, and for Cersei's character, because I genuinely think you could very easily look at this chapter and see Cersei as a traumatized little girl that has been neglected and almost not sexually or physically, but kind of mentally abusive family and relationship that she's had. What she seems to be doing and how that has settled in her head as she's developed as a character is she tries to be like the other people that have hurt her in her life, whether that's her father, whether that's Robert. And we really do get quite graphic details of how Robert was an absolute fucking brute to Cersei. But for most readers, generally, at any point, if you say, describe what King Robert is like as a character in the series of Game of Thrones, oh, he's jolly, he's, you know, he's a bit of a drunk, he doesn't really know what he's doing in terms of running the realm, he likes drinking and he likes whoring. dig a bit deeper and you might get more. But generally on the surface, that's how I would describe King Robert. He's, you know, Ned's childhood friend. He couldn't be such a monster, surely, if he was Ned's favourite buddy when they were great. You know, there's all of this chapter, if you read between the lines, and even if you don't believe what Cersei's saying and what she's thinking, think about how her thoughts and emotions translate into her behaviour with Tenor. Tenor's on her. This is so complex, but Tenor Merryweather is clearly on her own mission here. Whether she's been planted there by her husband or somebody else or whatever, she's there for a reason, to please the Queen. So in a way, you could look at this again and say, oh, she's kind of going along with this sort of like sexual thing that happens between them. But you could also look at this and say, this is sexual assault. This is Cersei.
Oh, it totally is. Yeah.
Completely asserting her, you know, to the point where, again, those parallels between Cersei's memory of saying to Robert, you're hurting me. He rapes her constantly, regularly. And she says to him, it hurts, you're hurting me. And he just puts it down to, that wasn't me, it was the wine. Exactly the same thing is repeated again in this chapter. Tenor says to her, you're hurting me. And she says, it's just the wine, sweetling. It's creepy as fucking all shit, this chapter. But it's the one where, why do we dismiss as readers? Why is it? Because it's coming from, there's just so many questions I've got about this. And I think this is the chapter that makes me, we're leading up to this horrific walk of shame. And I remember reading this as a reader and thinking, yes, Cersei's getting her, she's getting a comeuppance. And then you remember this chapter and it's hard to be so delighted about what's happening to Cersei. It's just
villainize her completely, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that shame chapter, it's that, when you say that in light of this, it's really difficult. I think ultimately this is building up, and even it comes up in the next chapter with Jenna, is saying that she saw Tywin Lannister smile once, and it was the day that Jaime was born. Well, she says it was the day you were born. And I think all of this is building up to Cersei always knowing that she, even though she was the oldest, that the only reason Tywin gave her the light of day was that she was Jaime's twin. Had she not been born, it wouldn't have bothered Tywin.
No, she was just there as a byproduct of Jaime.
She has never admitted that in her own head, that actually, and I think it'll come to this, that Tyrion will end up being a more valuable Lannister than Cersei, even though Cersei has put them in this position through her role as the queen. But I think it's the reason why she ended up sleeping with Jaime in the first place and seducing him, because she was trying to buy into whatever Tywin was buying into. And I think she was just fucked up from day one, and by her dad. And then all of these daddy issues, there's a line there all the way to Robert Baratheon. And Tywin knew, he would have known what kind of guy Robert Baratheon was. Lyanna knew what kind of guy Robert Baratheon was. Lyanna didn't just run away with Rhaegar because she fancied Rhaegar. Like, Lyanna did not want to marry Robert Baratheon. There had to have been rumors. A guy like that, who gets drunk all of the time and sleeps around from a very young age. I mean, there's every chance that was one of the reasons why he was sent to the Vale.
To the point where it really seriously makes me question anything to do with Ned and any thoughts Ned has ever had. Because if he's thinks so fondly of this guy who wasn't just his childhood friend, he knew him growing, he fought for him. He must have known And
do you not think, though,
why is it excused? Why is it excused by everybody, including us, the readers? Why do we excuse Robert as a brute and as a rapist? And
because it's the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
This is one of those things. It's going to sound very sexist, but I wonder, women do it with other women. We overlook weird sexual things that women have, or weird ways in which they manipulate partners in relationships. We overlook that in our friends. There's every chance that Ned does this with Robert, or he doesn't realize to what extent or how cruel Robert is. Like, and I've said this before, I mean, they spent a lot of time together on their own in the Vale, but outside of that, how much time do you really get to spend with somebody? It sounds to me like Ned would have been like Jaime, out around the camps, hanging out with the men, getting to know people, whereas Robert would have been in some tent somewhere or some campfire getting drunk. Even when they were at war together, they may have ridden together during the day, but I wonder how much would Ned have known him at night. It feels that when we're following Jaime, especially in the next chapter, he's very much alone in the camp. He hangs out with his cousin a little bit, but he's not out drinking and with women and stuff like that. So I get the impression that Jaime would have, or Ned would have been kind of like Jaime, but that's not to excuse it. I'm sure Ned knew what rumors. I mean, he warned Cersei for a reason, right? He knew that Robert would have killed her. He knew him well enough to know that there wasn't going to be an escape for Cersei, that he had to tell her. And he sacrificed his own life then, but yeah. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us. I have no idea. I never get notifications for anything these days.
Yeah, YouTube's just terrible. I read somewhere actually today, if you unclick the bell and unsubscribe and then go back and subscribe and click the notification bell, it fixes that weird glitch. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
So Ronnie says Tywin didn't care if he gave his daughter to Robert. She wasn't a son. Yeah. I think ultimately it's leading up to an epic showdown. I think it'll be said between Cersei and Jaime that she only ever was trying to get to Dad through Jaime. There'll be something there. Because Jaime genuinely loves Cersei. Although you could argue that Jaime is a victim of Cersei in a way, but it's a very weird family dynamic for sure.
Yeah, it's just they both think of each other as like, you know, like she talks about it being, it's not like Jaime, you know, nothing's ever like Jaime. Jaime's the, like, you know, that's where she feels safe and comfortable in terms of intimacy and things, and he kind of thinks the same way about, I mean, they've been at this since they were children. If she was thrown into this horrific marriage with Robert, you can kind of understand why this weird fucked up relationship with a brother might continue under those circumstances. If she's she's not going to be happy with the treatment that she's getting from, I mean, he's physically mauling her and like raping her, and you know, I mean, fairly regularly in the early days, but it just horrible.
But the other thing is, the interesting thing with Merryweather being in her bed, she talks about not wanting to be alone at night and not wanting an empty bed, not for a sexual reason, but because she doesn't want to be alone. And I wonder, was that a substitute for the lack of affection she got at home?
Yeah.
It sounds to me that this wasn't just a problem with Tywin. This also was a problem with Joanna Lannister. It feels like there wasn't much of a relationship between her and Joanna either, and that whatever was broken in Cersei scared Joanna enough not to develop a motherly relationship with her.
And of course, then that becomes really easy for Cersei, as she's wont to do, blame everybody else except herself. So that then becomes a projection of the reason that, you know, I didn't, because of Tyrion. Everything's Tyrion's fault. There's, I completely agree with Connie here. Connie's saying Cersei parasitic on Jaime. She wants him because she cannot be him. And I think that's, you see this in this chapter. She tries to be like other people who she either thinks that, you know, there always seems to be, and I think that's just so sad. I think that's really sad and very, very, unfortunately quite common in victims of abuse and violence, is you begin to emulate the characteristics that have been kind of meted out on you, and I think that's what she's doing here.
Not to excuse the abuse, but a lot of people who abuse were abused. That doesn't, like, that obviously that doesn't mean everyone who's abused becomes abusers, but it happens just that often abusers are abused. The thing with Cersei as well, this whole conversation with Robert throws open the nature-nurture debate with Joffrey, because there's obviously something with Cersei that's naturally kind of prone to immoral decision making, whether that's a nurture thing or not. There may be a genetic strain of that in the Lannisters, but the Joffrey thing with him killing cats and Robert recognizing that this was a massive problem. Did he recognize this because of his own kind of inclinations towards violence? Did he recognize that in his own son? This is the thing that we'll never get an answer to, but it does mean that Joffrey may not have just been bad because he was a product of incest or anything like that. It could have been a nurture thing, because his dad was a brute, not Jaime. Jaime is not like that, but he is. Although Jaime would throw the kid out the window.
The main thing for me with Cersei is there are clues to why she is how she is that are really sad and actually quite painful, and it brings up issues about how women are treated in this environment. You know, there's the whole the political issue around gender and primogeniture and all that kind of stuff with Dawn, and, you know, female monarchs and that, you know, so you can, there is an argument there to be made, but it's blown out of the water completely, and not even I mean, oh my god, how obvious is it in this chapter what an absolute twat King Robert is. Just Robert Baratheon is an absolute fucking turd.
He's awful.
Yet we don't pay as much attention to it. We brush it under the carpet. We kind of make excuses for it because, hey, it's Cersei that's telling us this. The fact that she is such an hateful, awful, terrible woman and an awful character to an almost comical level completely and cleverly distract us away from the fact that there's some real truth here about why this woman is how she is and why she behaves the way she behaves. And it's very complex, and I really, really congratulate the writer on being able to do that, being able to just lay right out on the page some real obvious stuff that's happened, and we dismiss it.
As Connie says, Robert is a pig killed by a pig.
Yeah, completely.
And I think if we're ever going to get a if Cersei is ever going to get satisfaction for this, ironically, it'll be through her most hated foe. I think it'll be Tyrion. I think if anyone is going to somehow defend her on that front, it'll be Tyrion, not Jaime.
Tyrion, and wow, has she got crazy mad on for Stannis. You know, everything is about, you know, she completely believes that Stannis is the enemy.
Well, it makes sense what she was saying about Renly, that she believed Renly would give her more problems. But of course, for a lot of Westeros, Renly looks like Robert. he's Robert the second coming.
Yeah.
So it may have been that she was like triggered by Renly in a way because he looked so much like the man who brutalized her for years. And this also might explain her hatred for the Tyrells.
Yeah.
Because they were so fond of the Baratheons on the Renly side. But I mean, the whole thing. I mean, the whole thing with this chapter that really creeps me out as well is Qyburn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where we have Pycelle being alarmed by her laughing out loud and being really unreasonable with the Tyrells and kind of dismissing this threat from the Ironborn, we have Qyburn, and within the same breath, she turns to Qyburn and says, when after their mountain talk, she says, this better not go wrong, or I will kill you, or you'll know what I'll do to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, Qyburn is like, yes, Your Majesty, or whatever he says. It's like, really, Qyburn? Really? Are you really that like groveling here? I don't like. Why aren't you seeing what Pycelle is seeing, or why aren't you at least pretending? So it seems as though there's something not quite right with this guy, obviously. Not just the necromancy and that weird, like giving him Stokeworth later on, and we know what happens with Stokeworth later. The thing is, with the Stokeworth thing, we're just believing what Qyburn says, right? Do we have any witnesses to Qyburn's torture? Because
No.
he says in this chapter that he's finished with the puppet masters, right? He's finished with the puppeteers, the show, the puppeteers they arrested and tortured.
Oh yeah.
So he's finished with them, and she gives him Stokeworth because Stokeworth has information that would look bad for Cersei. But Stokeworth has information that would look bad for Cersei. Why would you leave that woman in a catatonic state when you might be able to use that information later? Like, I feel like Cersei's just taken his word for it, that he's tortured and killed all these people.
Yeah, she's not doing due diligence at all. No.
Does she investigate this ever? Does she go down and see if Stokeworth is actually, like, she could be fine. She could be down there drinking tea.
Yeah, they all could be. They all could be. It could be. He could be like some sort of savior, you know, and he's kind of like, here's a secret passage this way, get out this way. It just, it could, but yeah, I'd never really thought of that before. We are really just taking his word for it. I mean, like, you know, I'm not, there's the mountain, so it's not, you know, they're not all having a tea party down there. There's sort of serious shit going on, but yeah, we do only have his word for what's happening with everybody else.
With Stokeworth later, there's something about her not being able to feed herself, or she's no longer.
I think he's chopped her arms off or something.
Oh, that's what Connie said. Lost use for arms. Yeah, I don't know. It feels to me like, why would you take out somebody? Okay, Cersei will kill you and everything, but Cersei's never going down to those cells to check. Why would you get rid of somebody who could be quite valuable in taking out Cersei later on? Because he's not loyal to Cersei. He just wants to do his weird magic stuff, his weird necromancy. But I don't know. There's something a bit strange. The other thing I'm not entirely clear on, this siege at Dragonstone and the point of it.
Well, again, it's this burning fury that she has for Stannis, as seeing him as the enemy. So there's a few things going on in Cersei's head here. She's thinking the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the enemy, Ironborn, of my enemy, Stannis, potentially there could be some, before she, you know, so what she's thinking is, I'll use the Ironborn and then I'll just wipe them out because they'll irritate me. Something that Robert should have done and that I'm sure my father would have done. And it's like, maybe not. Yeah. But I also think that this is about, so she wants to make sure that the siege at Dragonstone continues.
Yeah.
And what? Oh, it's the way it's written. The way it's written is
Dragonstone at the moment, though.
There's a Castellan there that's keeping an eye on Dragonstone, but basically it's Stannis's.
Yeah, it feels like it just feels a little bit like there's nobody's going to come out of Dragonstone to fight.
Well, this is what the Tyrells are saying. While things are all quiet on the Western Front, let's get the troops out of there. Let's go around and defend the Reach and the Shield Islands and fend off the Ironborn. And she's like, well, is that area really that important? And also she's kind of thinking, I could use the Ironborn in a, I could kind of collaborate later on with the Ironborn. So she's kind of like, but the way she, again, the position that she's in, she's the queen.
Yeah.
So anybody in those circumstances turning around and saying, are you shitting me? Are you really saying that you're not going to defend this area of your kingdom just because you've got some shitty idea of some ridiculous feud about who's the prettiest queen? Really?
Also, like, winter is coming and you want to try and take Dragonstone, and rather than protecting the most valuable area in terms of food supplies, it doesn't, like,
it's the way that
no one there to tell her this in a logical way. Like, Kevin is gone, and it's like, we need Kevin. We don't need the Tyrells emotionally being involved in this. Like, there's no one there. Like, it's her hatred of the Tyrells that's preventing her from seeing this clearly. And the other thing is, Willis, we're told, has the numbers to defend the land against the Ironborn, just not the ships, which makes me wonder what will happen with those forces down there and where will they go. Just whenever the time comes, there's quite a number of Tyrell bannermen down there that are interesting. Connie says Tywin told her to let the northern enemies have each other and then fight whoever's left. This was way earlier when he told Tyrion to marry Sansa. She was told to marry Willis. Yeah, that's right. She was told to marry Willis and she didn't. But yeah, it's just, I think it is this chapter is pretty shocking. From you've got the Robert stuff, which is heartbreaking, and you never want to see anyone go through that. And then you've got her just very quickly handing Stokeworth over to Qyburn after she's been through one of the worst tragedies of her life.
Yeah,
and it is hard for people to reconcile these two parts of Cersei.
I mean, it's heartbreaking because Felice turns up and says, again, it's that, like, we did this for you. Please help us because we did all of this for you in the first place. I mean, it was a bit messy. I kind of agree with Cersei in that they could have dealt with that a lot. I mean, just going and turning up and sort of saying single combat, sir, and it's like, what? Whoa. Where's this come from?
The only reason she sent them to do it in the first place was because she wanted to see was Bronn hiding Tyrion. And then she even says afterwards, I knew he never had Tyrion.
Yeah, it's a silly and stupid notion.
So now the Stokeworths have gone through all of this for nothing.
Yeah.
Just because you made an emotional, impulsive.
She's an arsehole. Yeah. I think but she does say some things that are like, the beginning of it's like two halves of this chapter. You've got the first bit with the Tyrells and Loras at the end of that kind of saying, send me, and falling on his knees and saying, I'll go and defend Dragonstone, which is a complete suicide mission, obviously. And then you've got the second half of the chapter, which is her feeling as though she's doing all these queenly duties, and then this kind of weird interaction that she has with Tenor at the end of the chapter. The funniest thing for me is that the seethe that's there between her and Marjorie, and the build up to them eventually calling each other like an absolute bitch in front of, you know, in each other's faces. But oh, you can feel it. You can cut that atmosphere. And she turns around and says, well, you know, they're talking about Stannis and dealing with Stannis. And she turns around and says, you know, we all have to deal with scum, you know, from time to time. And she kind of side eyes the Tyrells, and it's like, ooh, you know, burn. Yeah. She does have some lines that are really kind of like, oh my God, that's. But again, it's the build up, isn't it, to like everyone wanting to stick it to Cersei, the villainess of the piece, and there's so much more underneath that.
It's still hard to, obviously, you know, not to excuse what Robert does or whatever. She still has a responsibility to a child that's there. And I don't think she thinks about Tommen once in this chapter. And that's worrying.
Yeah.
And it's very, I feel, a part of me feels she'll actually kill Tommen inadvertently. I don't think it'll be a suicide thing as it was in the show. I think something will happen where she will actually kill Tommen. She seems that detached as his mother right now.
That would be the ultimate expression of self-fulfilling prophecy, wouldn't it?
It'd be interesting if like the mountain or something ended up, like if Tommen ran at her in a fury or something in the mountain, just
yeah,
it'd be something like that.
Yeah. That I've got, you know, I'm under no illusion that something like that could take place, and it would be this, you know, she's self-fulfilling prophecy in
absolutely
extreme. Yeah, completely. But yeah, she's there's a sadness as well to Cersei's character and to Cersei's story. She does say when Loras talks about offering to take Dragonstone to free the Red Winds so that they can go and tackle the Ironborn on the other side of Westeros, she says, may they sing songs about you, you know, brave sir. And do you remember a couple of chapters ago when Loras and Jaime were talking about the White Book, and they were saying, they kind of alluded to one of them will, you know, one of them will be unknown in history and one of them will have songs written about them, and it's like, okay, I wonder which one will be which. And you know, will Loras just fade into obscurity? Will they never sing songs about Loras? Will he never be, you know, all this like brave Knight of Flowers? You know, yeah, I just thought that was
I think it'll be, yeah, I think it'll be Jaime. I don't know, I feel like it'll be Jaime that'll be obscure. Because he's already getting forgotten, actually, as we go into oh no, it was in Jaime 4, I think he was already forgotten. His deeds were already being forgotten.
Yeah. I think the only other thing I would mention about this chapter for me is just an example of how just when we think that, oh, things are so bad for Cersei, in a way, she's, you know, we can see how she's arrived at where she's at. She's completely, she'll never be able to get any forgiveness from me, even though I can recognize some of the things that are there in her story. She's so just fucking delusional, completely delusional. And she creates this own narrative in her own head about, I mean, the bit she's talking, there's a bit where she's thinking to herself about how many people have betrayed her, like Sansa Stark and Malaria when she was a young girl, all these horrible bitches who've betrayed her kindness. And it's like, hang on a minute, Cersei, what kindness? What kindness have you ever shown your friends, your, you know, your like wards, your guests, your visitors? So, I mean, yeah, there's that, you know, there's that feigned fakeness, but she was never, ever kind to Sansa.
No, but she also thinks, when she's thinking about those former bedfellows and girlfriends from the past, they were all using her to get to Jaime, she felt.
You're just
So-
delusional.
So,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
it comes back to Tywin was only interested in Jaime, but also she's very vague on the details on how she actually got rid of those girls. And what she did to them. I'm not saying she murdered all of them, but I'm sure there was violence involved. Connie says Catelyn was all for Robb to the detriment of younger children, and Cersei close to the same. Yeah, and she was also all about Bran to the detriment of Rickon at one stage. So yeah, that certainly happens. Should we move on to Jaime 5?
Yeah.
So this is the chapter where we meet Sir Davin Lannister and Jenna Frey, but she was a Lannister. So it's great to meet other Lannisters. We also find out, this is the shocking thing for me. One of my favorite scenes of late in Game of Thrones is the scene between Jaime and Edmure. I actually thought it was really well done in the show.
Yeah.
But I don't think they emphasize the fact that I think they did show him hanging at one stage, Edmure. I think that scene was in it, but I don't know if they emphasize the fact that they're hanging every single day.
I think they showed him on
I think they did, yeah.
On like the they rolled him out on the stage kind of thing.
So if you've been following along our reread, you'll know that I am a big Edmure fan, and I think Edmure is grossly underestimated and just treated so badly by his own family in this book. And the fact that he is getting hung every single day, I just don't know how. It's a testament to how strong a character he is, that he is surviving this. And his own family would have underestimated. I'd say his own family would have written him off to die on the second day of this treatment, but he's not. I mean, this has been going on for months. And even the Lannisters are like, this is too much. And it feels like things are getting really strained between the Freys and the Lannisters here. It's getting really bad, to the point where it was actually a good thing Cersei sent Jaime, because I don't know who else could even have any hope of kind of dissolving tensions.
Well,
here.
that was one of my first questions. What might have happened if Jaime hadn't been sent by Cersei to sort things out in the Riverlands?
I think they would have started fighting.
It would have boiled over, wouldn't it? You
Yeah.
cannot sustain what's been going on up there for much longer.
And I think keeps calling them stoats and just keeps like talking them down and saying they're dirty and they're weird, and it's like this isn't a group that are getting on. And the big thing, massive red flag, Riverlands conspiracy, something's going on. Jaime notes that a lot of the bannermen of the Tully house that had bent the knee to the crown are nowhere to be seen. He's not seeing any of their banners around. This to me is a red flag. Something's going down in the Riverlands. That he is starting to kind of go, we've got this issue here at Riverrun, but something's not right. And he's only there like a couple of hours, and he's already like, what's going on?
There's a sense that at any minute, these new friends in the Riverlands are just going to completely turn their back, turn their back totally. And it all depends on what's happening with the Freys. So again, it's this intricate kind of different levels of, if this happens, that person's going to do this, and that will have that chain reaction to this. So it's like this tinderbox at the moment that could just completely collapse. And I think Jaime sees that and thinks, okay, this can't be sustained in the long term. We've got to get in there swift, do something, whatever it is. And I think the interesting thing about, because the question for me from a while ago, especially when he was sent on this mission, is will he take arms again against the Tully or a Stark? And in this chapter, when it comes to vows, Jaime basically claims that he admits in his own mind that the vow that he made to the king comes first, comes above any other vows that he's made to anybody else. So there is a possibility, actually, that he could take up arms against the Starks or the Tullys.
Okay, well, this is my question about the vow he made to the king.
Mm-hmm.
When will he admit that Tommen isn't the rightful king? And how much does that vow cost? How much is it worth if it isn't? If the king shouldn't be there?
Yeah, because
or if something happens to the king, if it ends up being Queen Cersei. So then he hasn't made that vow.
No, he's made no vows to his son. He's made vows to the king, who isn't a legitimate king, and he knows that. So that could be his get out clause. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I feel like Jaime needs someone to step in and absolve him of one vow or the other, because he's still a bit conflicted over it for sure. But just this Riverland conspiracy, a lot of the Riverlands, the stories in the Riverlands revolve around duty and honor and vengeance, which are linked to the House Tully words.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, it feels like to me that a lot of the stories or the issues or the conspiracies, or say like the thing with Bran, the Catspaw, the thing with Ned, you could trace a line back to Littlefinger being involved in a lot of them, especially with the key players, even in the Red Wedding. I wonder, are the houses in the Riverlands conspiring to take Littlefinger out now that he is the most powerful person in the Riverlands, but he's also an outsider? And everybody can figure, like, if the right people are talking to one another, they'll figure out that they'll draw a line to, he hasn't been that careful, I don't think. You could figure it out, I think, if you were talking to the right people. I don't know. There's something going on
to take Harrenhal off Littlefinger.
Yeah.
And you think, I mean, potentially Em Frey could be in the middle of that conspiracy.
Potentially. Yeah.
He was very resolute, almost like a plan had already been made. This is my castle. I will, and then he goes from "this is my castle" to "I'm going to be liege lord," and it's like, and even Jaime is like, "Look, I'm not really that into politics, but even I know that Harrenhal is where you should be pledging your allegiance to Littlefinger."
Well, and the Freys were double crossed then, because they believed that if Tywin Lannister was giving them Riverrun, they'd have the Riverlands, but that's not what happens. Harrenhal is reinstated as the center of power, and Littlefinger it's handed to an outsider. So it feels like to me that if there's a Riverland conspiracy, it's going to lead back to Littlefinger in some way. This could be something that Kevin potentially uncovered, and or maybe got wind of or something. I don't know. There's something not quite right in the Riverlands. I don't think it's just about working against the crown. I feel like they're going to work against the crown by taking out Littlefinger. And because the curse is so strong there, they may end up kind of dissolving power from Harrenhal. But he is going to have a lot of the food, a lot of the power. It's building up to being a big human on human battle in the Riverlands.
Yeah.
A lot of players that we haven't seen in a while are coming out. And there's form for this, right? In this chapter, Jaime thinks back to a time he had to ride to Riverrun with a message from Tywin to Hoster Tully. And he's thinking about it in terms of, this was when I got to meet the Blackfish for the first time. He was really excited. The Blackfish was even younger than he is now. Hoster was trying to get him set up with Lysa, and Lysa wasn't the mad Lysa that everybody knew. She was very quiet and drawn. And he was there for 2 weeks while Hoster mulled over the message that Tywin sent him.
Yeah.
What was the message? And is this part of your Illuminati, the older generation Illuminati? What was in this message?
well, it's about alliances, isn't it? And it's about getting rid of the Targaryens. And I think it was, you've got Tywin, Hoster, Rickard Stark,
John Arryn,
Stefan Baratheon, possibly.
Possibly, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
Elena Tyrell, maybe.
Yeah, Elena, maybe. I don't know if the Dornish were involved in any of this at all. Possibly not. They seem more like they would be on the other side of it. But who knows? There seems to be a lot of sway. It's marriage alliances are a real weapon in this scenario, and we hear about that from the lasting impact that it's had on Jenna, from being a 7-year-old. This was her life. It was mapped out for her, and it was only because her father decided that he wanted to make Lord Frey happy. So just on that whim, on that ridiculous whim, this marriage alliance was made. So it's a powerful thing, and it has impact, but it's also used as a weapon, I think, with the Illuminati to strengthen their position, to remove the Targaryens, get rid of them.
At this stage, Catelyn was already promised to Brandon Stark. I think Jaime alludes to that. In almost a way that, like, if he was going to be interested in anyone, he would have been interested in Cat, not Lysa. But the way he thinks about it, it seems to me that Hoster trying to put Lysa and Jaime together was undermining whatever message Tywin had sent. It didn't feel like it was in line with whatever message Tywin had sent. I think this is going to be important later. I think whatever was going on with these guys is going to be important later.
So what do you think, everybody? What was the message that was sent from Tywin to Hoster? Why did it take him so long to reply to it?
Because it's way before Robert's rebellion. It's way before that. We're talking, Jaime was probably 13, 14, because he was a squire. So he wasn't.
The obvious thing is that Tywin has asked, and Hoster is playing out the request of, I want a marriage alliance between my son and your daughter. Maybe what he was asking for was, can Jaime marry Cat instead of the Stark? Instead of the Stark. Yeah.
So maybe he was trying to undermine the plans. That could be it. Yeah, that could be it.
Like getting them together. And the funny thing is, Jaime reflects that actually Cat was the one out of the two sisters that had a bit more about her, because he compares every woman that he ever meets to Cersei, and whether or not she's got as much moxie as Cersei has got. And
that would have been an interesting match, Cat and Jaime. So what do you make of Lysa already being quite quiet and withdrawn? Does it play into our belief that she was abused?
I think so. I think something is, she's been subject to something that's, I don't think it's just because she's jealous of or intimidated by her sister. I think she's damaged and somebody's damaged her. And
Barbara, that thought literally just crossed my mind. I wondered, did Tywin actually want Tyrion for Lysa? That literally just crossed my mind as well. But was there mention of Tywin trying to get Jaime with Lysa before? Did someone mention that in the past? Did Cat come up with mention that?
I mean, considering Jaime is his prize.
Yeah, I don't think he would want
No, and Lysa's not particularly,
It seems from the beginning of Game of Thrones, Tywin has been actively undermining the power at River Run. He has been trying to re-center power in the Riverlands at Harrenhal.
Yeah.
For a long time. Whatever slight he feels, I think there was some slight here by Hoster. And maybe Tywin got cut out of whatever Illuminati because of the answer he got for this message. because he seems to not have been involved then. Maybe I could be wrong, but there's something going on here between these older generations that isn't right. I'm missing out, and Connie is great. She says, I think Ed Muir endures the hanging because the ones who pushed him at the wedding. Yeah, that's true. Rob and Kat were brutally murdered, and he still has a chance. The realm has to know he married Lysa by now and is distracted in the Vale. That's Littlefinger. And Lysa is now dead by a sketchy death. Their old liege lord's daughter. Yeah, so this is all very. I wouldn't be surprised if the Riverlands are working with the Vale. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And Connie also says maybe Littlefinger wasn't the only one who lost out. Jaime and Peter are both sarcastic to Ned. That's true. I mean, maybe Jaime did actually fancy Kat. He seems to have a lot of respect for her when they have that meeting initially.
Yeah.
Jaime mentioned Lysa possibility, also Oberyn. Yeah, I thought that was mentioned before. But there's something that's going on. It could be, Barbara, I think you could be right there. I think it could be Tyrion for Lysa, and Hoster saw that as a slight. And maybe, I mean, if like we believe Lysa was abused, maybe he thought just by Jaime fooling around with Lysa, it would be enough to piss off Tywin, and it's just another way of kind of saying no, and whatever. I don't know. There's something weird going on.
Well, he's definitely trying to push them together, and for a reason. There is as we said at the beginning of this episode, there's lots of foreshadowing and little nuggets of things that make you think, oh yeah, that's where that theory came from. This adds what this is a classic theory. The Valonqar is a classic, old time theory. And I've heard lots and lots of different theories about who the Valonqar could be, including one, I think I remember mentioning this before, one of my favourites is from Bar, when Bar used to do theory videos, and she did one on Edmure being the Valonqar because he's the little brother of Cat, so it's vengeance for everything that's happened there. I quite like that when she put that together really well. But of course, the majority of people feel that Jaime will be the Valonqar. And he has a dream in this chapter where he throttles Cersei with his golden hand, that he was still able to throttle her. So that adds a massive, I can't not mention that. This adds a massive amount of weight to that Valonqar theory. There is, I've got to mention it, well, we're going to talk about Jenna in a second, I'm sure, but a man like Tywin only comes along once in 1,000 years. And also, I forgot to mention that 1,000 was mentioned twice in Cersei's chapter, in the previous chapter about the 1,000 ships. And it's mentioned a couple of times. And here, a man like Tywin Lannister only comes along once in 1,000 years. So, yeah. And if we were wondering, I think there are a few characters in this book that actually are a feast for crows. And Cleos Frey, unfortunately, is one of them.
Yeah, well, I said that earlier on. Jaime questions where these stories come from, about him, because as he's on this journey, he hears ridiculous stories about his capture, about how he lost his hand, and here he is, like, making up a ridiculous story about Cleos Frey that, oh, he was so brave, and I buried him by the roadside, and he also makes a statement about all bones looking the same, which also makes me think about Ned. But yeah, there's I don't think he'll ever have to bring that body to Jenna. I don't think he'll ever get the chance. Jenna strikes me as one of the coolest aunts ever. I mean, that story about Tywin when he was 10 years old, standing up for her and the respectability of his family. And she says, I will love him forever for that. And she's married 50 years to this Frey guy.
Yeah.
And she is completely ruling the roost here. And she even sends him out of the tent so she can talk to Jaime. And of course, she utters the immortal lines, Tyrion is Tywin's son, not you, which every secret Targ conspiracy theorist out there uses. But of course, I feel like she's saying this out of fear, right? Basically saying, look what Tywin can do. Tyrion can do that too. He's not going away. Like, we're not worried enough about Tyrion. We need to worry more about Tyrion. We need to worry about what he's going to do next. That's what I feel she's saying.
See, I developed a little mini theory in this chapter, which is about the Red Lion, who is Tywin. Well, first of all, I completely agree. Jenna is totally not just a cool aunt, but she's a cool character. And with this book being very heavy leaning towards female characters, it's actually refreshing to have a Lannister character as opposed to Cersei, who we discussed at great length. But
she's the second female Lannister we've met, right, Jenna?
Yes.
We've only had Cersei, right? Yeah. And Marcella, I suppose.
The way she's described by Jaime as being a lot of Lannister. And I just keep thinking that, like, a whole lot of Lannister, you know. But she, just the beginning where she says, the loss that I'm talking about is your father, you idiot, not your hand, not your golden hand.
What an idiot.
Just I just love her right from the very beginning. I just think she's a real force of that. She's, first of all, she's a woman in a battle camp, you know, right in the middle of it. She's right in the thick of it. And the fact that, what a horrible, like, she's making the best of the situation that she was in, which was awful. Her father at age 7, so you've got absolutely no choice or control over anything that happens to you in this scenario. You're just given to one of these stoats just because your father's really weak and he's a man, but the position that he's in, he can decide on a whim that he wants to please one of his lords by just passing you off age 7. And so, like I said earlier, we get a sense of how powerful marriage alliances can be, but also on a personal level here through Jenna, we can see the lasting impact that has, that those decisions that are made on your behalf when you're a 7-year-old little girl can actually have. But she has a lot of love and respect for Tywin as her older brother. Anyway, sorry, my theory is, when she's describing Tywin, she talks about him as being the Red Lion, and this thing about Tywin smiling when he smiles. And I think there's something hidden in here. So if we think about when does Tywin smile, on what occasions does he smile, and what do we think that means? When somebody smiles, it's usually because they're happy. So immediately we think about, on what occasions is Tywin smiling, because we can get a sense that he would be happy with that occasion. So he'd smile when he married Joanna, when he had Jaime, when he was made Hand of the King. These all sound like plausible reasons why somebody would be happy in the extreme that would make them smile when they don't normally smile. If you look at this a different way, which is the only thing that motivated Tywin to smile wasn't because he was happy about a situation, but because this was him nailing revenge. So think about those examples again. When he married Joanna, so basically when I'm saying revenge, I'm saying this is Tywin saying a big fuck you to whoever he's got one over on. And when he married Joanna, he got one over on Ares. When he became the Hand, he kind of got one over on Ares. When the twins were born, or, you know, forgetting Cersei's importance, but when Jaime was born, but the Golden Twins when they were born, and I don't believe they are Tywins. I think they are Targaryen.
I lean that way too, yeah.
I do believe that Tyrion, I believe what Jenna's saying here, which is Tyrion is Tywin's son, not you. And yes, you can take that metaphorically, blah, 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 whatever. You know, he's got more of your father's characteristics than you. But I think genuinely what she means is biologically, Tywin's not your father.
And there's
suggestions
here that she also fathered, she also allowed her husband to be cuckolded. So she can recognize that potentially.
Now, there's a little loophole here, because actually the twins, the Golden Twins, are still Lannister, even though they're not Tywins, because Joanna was a Lannister. So you can get around that. There's a little loophole there. They may be Targaryen, but also still half Lannister. I believe Jenna, and I believe that the only time Tywin smiled was when he was getting revenge on someone. And the clear example that's in there is when he did that thing, you know, when he got revenge on, as Jenna described, that scheming little witch, whoever it was in that, you know, in the example. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, Melinda somebody or other or whatever. You know, he smiled then. There was 4 occasions in history that anyone can remember Tywin Lannister smiling, and you can either look at it as in being extremely happy, which sounds like, you know, or it's when he's getting his, yes, I've got my revenge. And I feel that the latter. So my theory is Tywin only smiled when he was winning at getting revenge over on somebody. It was nothing to do with whether he was happy or not. But within that comes the revenge targeted against Ares. These two were firm friends when they were growing up. And then they just completely turned on each other, and everything was motivated to getting one up on each other.
I really like it. And there's also references to him laughing and how he never laughed, because the one thing Tywin Lannister hated, the thing that drove him more than anything else, was how Lannister was a source, the name Lannister was a source of ridicule. And that was his life mission. They didn't want to be, he didn't want that Lan the Clever kind of he didn't want that ridicule because of his dad or whatever. He didn't want that ridicule. And further evidence as to why Cersei and Jaime are not his, they laugh a lot, they mock a lot at the expense of the Lannister name. Yeah. And Tyrion laughs, obviously he's a joker, he's sarcastic, he's known for that. It's the one thing that Tywin really hates, maybe even more than the fact that Tyrion was born a little person, is that kind of mockingness. But Tyrion, and we've said it before, we're going to sound like broken records, Tyrion doesn't do it at the expense of the Lannister name. He may do it at his own expense, but he really does fight for the Lannister name. And even if she's not referencing the Targ thing, I think she's also referencing the fact that the truest Lannister of the 3 of you is Tyrion. Yeah. He is the one that will fight for the Lannister name. He's the one who wants the rock. He wants to keep the rock a rock, you know, for the Lannister name. So yeah.
And I think with the twins, I think he probably thought that they're not mine, they're Ares, but I'm going to claim them and they will be mine, and I'll bring them up as my, you know, that's why it was like, haha, these are your children, but you're never going to have them.
Or I can use them to undermine your power, which is what he does.
Which is exactly what he does. He uses them, Tyrion is more like Tywin in the description of things that have happened up to this point that Cersei likes to think she is, and Jaime by proxy, by being the golden boy. Everyone thinks, you know, you just presume, of course, they're Lannisters, of course, they're Tywins, but actually it doesn't take much to you know, deconstruct that and think about, each of their individual relationships with their father. And it's Tyrion and Tywin are related. The twins are not. And Jenna comes right out and says it here.
So Jenna is her own grandchildren, her own grandson. She doesn't want any Frey influence. She wants to have a Lannister influence. She can't quite put her finger on why Kevin hasn't hung around, but Jaime reckons it's because of the incest. I feel like Jenna is astute enough to know what was going on between Cersei and Jaime. I think she thinks like me.
I think it's open knowledge that's just nobody talks about, but everybody knows. I mean, even Davin, immediately he's just that undercurrent of like, oh, and how's your sister, and there's just a feeling there that he knows that he has to inquire about how, you know, you're obviously very close to your sister. There's just this, it's obvious to me.
I think so too. And the other thing, I think it's Jenna, and I only thought about it as we were going to go live, and I couldn't remember which chapter it was mentioned, but I think it's Jenna points out that Bravos are calling in all their debts across Westeros. And I think I pointed that out last week with the Tarleys and the Aussie ships that were at Maidenpool. And it seems to me like this could be the one thing that really ultimately turns everybody against the crown, or cripples the armies that the crown thinks they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
Because if you can't pay the armies, even in grain, if you can't pay soldiers in grain, like nobody's going to fight for you. There's no way. Like if everybody is broke, good luck. There's not a hope that you're going to. And when we get into the Canals chapter, there's so much traffic going back and forth. This is all pointing red flags all over the place for Westeros.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for me and Jaime. Did you have anything else?
No, that was it.
I love your theory. I think it's a great theory. So then we're into our darkest chapter this week. Cat of the Canals, oysters, clams, and cockles. So where do we start?
Well, I've got quite a few. I've got quite a few questions about this chapter.
Okay, let's
the main one being, again, going back to why the Faceless Men want Arya specifically, because we've kind of agreed that this was a targeted campaign to get her to become a faceless man. So she right, okay. The thing about all of this that we can gather so far is that to become a faceless man successfully, you have to become no one. Who are you? I'm no one. And you can change somebody's physical appearance. You can change like body parts, and that, you know, you can basically, and this is punctuated by Arya often, where she's, no, that's not me anymore. That was a girl I once was. And that almost there is that disassociation from Arya physically. But when it comes to a connection to your sense of self, your core being, the difference between Arya and anybody else, and possibly any other faceless man that's been through this training, is, yes, you can change your physical appearance, you can do things to your body parts and whatever, but you cannot remove that connection that you have to your, I don't know, spirit animal or whatever, if you're a warg. And right at the beginning of this chapter, we get this very strong sense that the wolf dreams that she's having, she smells and feels the fear, and it's very visceral. And they say that she's howling in her sleep in the middle of the night. She's in this dream and it's strong and she feels it. And she even thinks to herself, I can't get rid of that. I've got no choice in that. I can't just kind of put another new face on or whatever. She has no control over the fact that she falls asleep at night and she has these wolf dreams. Now, I've always thought, oh yeah, the thing that brings Arya back to who she is and remembering who she is and that she's Arya Stark of Winterfell and who her personality is, it's Needle. That's her personality identifier. But now I'm beginning to think it's more her warging abilities, which then makes me think, because she does have no choice over that. Everything else can slip by, and everything else, what she remembers, what her experiences were in King's Landing, what she once was and who she once was, and what she did when she was a certain name or nickname or whatever, all of that can slip away for this young girl to actually become no one in terms of her personality. But it will always snap her really strongly back into this sense of who she is through her wolf dreams. So the question is, do the Faceless Men want Arya? Have they recruited her deliberately so that they can see whether or not they can eliminate that aspect of her wolf dreams? Can they somehow remove that from her so that she does ultimately become no one? I mean, why would you do that? I don't know, but it's just...
So I still think there's some sort of mistaken prophecy here that it's a possibility anyway, that they have, like, everybody seems to have bits of prophecy that all kind of lead to an Azor Ahai type character or some sort of Lightbringer type character, whatever it is, or somebody who will have Lightbringer or whatever. But they all have different pieces. And I wonder, do the Faceless Men have the piece that says whoever Azor Ahai will be will have strong warging capabilities or skin changing capabilities, and that they've picked the wrong Stark? Because Bran is the strongest skin changer, obviously, not the strongest warger. And I feel like people get that mixed up all the time. Bran is actually needs to be closer to Summer than Arya does, or than Jon does. I feel like it's Arya's number one, then Jon, then Bran, and it could even be Rickon in that top three either. But I feel like there is something with her warging that they have recognized, because I feel like Jaqen recognized that as well.
Yeah, and she's been handpicked. She's definitely been handpicked.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that would stop anyone really from just devoting themselves completely to that training, that process of becoming a faceless man. It can happen. Anyone can become no one by going through that process, unless you have this thing about you that you've got no control over that immediately brings you back to who you are, who you were, who you were born, basically.
It's funny because we do actually have somebody go through this process. We actually have two people go through this process. And the best example of somebody completely disassociating themselves from their former identity is Theon. Yeah. And when he becomes Reek, it's like, holy shit, he's Reek. Like, he is Reek. But the same with Damphair. Like, Damphair is completely disassociated himself and given himself over to religion. Yeah. But you're right, there's no way they can stop Arya from doing this. This chapter, reading this again this week, I don't know if you're an X-Men fan, but
kind of.
There's this whole thing in the movies where Professor X and Magneto, they tried to control Jean's character. I don't know if you remember Jean. She's the red hair.
Oh, the Phoenix.
Yeah. Played by Famke Janssen, I think is her name. And they tried to, because her powers would overwhelm her and she wouldn't be able to control the violence that would be unleashed. So they put in all these kind of psychological blockers. It feels at the end of this chapter that that's what they're trying to do with Arya. They're trying to disable her. Or at least it could be one reason that they're trying to, like, what are we going to do? Like, she's out there murdering people. Like, have we just created this monster where she's just like, Arya murdered him. I didn't murder him. I'm no one. They're like, uh-oh, you're now a little bit out. We can't control her. Okay, we need to just like take out her sight or something. Because otherwise she's completely off the leash, pardon the pun. But there's maybe they feel like if they physically blind her, it could be, you could look at it this two ways, right? Physically blinding her might help stop her warging, or physically blinding her might actually increase her warging abilities. She might
well, they're just constantly testing her, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm so confused by that. If anyone in the chat wants to, my main question is, why are they blinding her? Is it to punish her? Is it to control her? Is it to strengthen her? Because she's breaking all the rules here.
I think they're trying to either eliminate her warging abilities, and they're trying different things. Will this do that? Will this do it? If we blind her, will that close her third eye or whatever? You know, they're trying to eliminate the warging powers, or they're trying to see that they're testing her to see whether or not she's the, you know, if there is some sort of prophesized you know, the faceless man who maybe is a physical manifestation of the many-faced god themselves, that they will, who whatever, you know, there's a power that's been born into the world, and if they can have that and harness that and train it, and they become, you know, otherwise this person would have been their worst enemy. So let's get them first. Let's have them first. So, yeah, I think it's just a way of either eliminating her powers or getting her to harness her powers for their benefit rather than against them.
So the reason I think there's been a mistake in the prophecy here, he kind of questions her. They're talking about, he talks about how every religion has a god of death, or something that equates to the death, because all men must die. And then she kind of questions this, and he kind of says, well, do you know of any race of people where they can live forever? And like, I'm going, yeah. Yeah, I do, yeah. And it was almost like, do you know, as in like, because Bran knows, right? So, and Jon knows. But are they asking Arya because maybe the chosen one should know? But she doesn't know this. She has no idea.
No.
So I wondered, was that part of the test and she failed it? Because, and then maybe they're like, oh, well, maybe she just doesn't know yet or something. But like, there is an other, there is a great other. And there is not all men must die, but not necessarily all others must die, right? We don't know how old the others are.
Yeah. But it's just going back to that duality again, isn't it? Ice and fire, life and death. So what you've got is factions of, do we want everybody to live forever? And Arya says, no, because all men must die, which is obviously where the faceless men are coming from. That's their mantra. So that's the fight. The fight is between a race of people who can live forever, and then another faction saying, no, absolutely not, all men must die. But I think the whole, sorry, go on.
No, there's something though with what you're saying there about the duality, because there's another weird duality in this chapter between cats and dogs. It's almost like she's been put in this position to be surrounded by feline presences rather than canine presence. But she's still drawn to a canine presence in a way with the sea lion, which is like barking at her and stuff. And it's like, it's almost like as many cats as follow her, and they're almost trying to maybe get her away from that canine instinct. She always finds a way back to it in some way. I know that's a stretch, but there is something weird about her relationship with animals in this chapter too.
She has another dream right at the end of this chapter before she wakes up blind, and in the dream that she has. So first of all, we can determine that whatever they've given her doesn't eliminate the fact that she's still having wolf dreams.
Yes.
It may have blinded her, but it's not stopped her from having wolf dreams. And in the dream, it's different. She dreams that she doesn't have a pack. And it's weird because in the day, she is traveling around with all these cats like it's a pack, but it's not. It's a pack, but it's not her pack. And
even all the friends she meets, it's almost like she has a pack.
And maybe this is foreshadowing that the faceless men also won't be her pack. Yeah. You know, she has this dream when they're already trying, whatever it is they're doing, poisoning her, testing her, training her, whatever it is that they're doing with giving her this potion, it blinds her, but it doesn't. It doesn't stop her wolf dreams. And it also, when she does have a wolf dream, it makes her feel as though I don't belong anywhere. I'm on my own. I don't have a pack. So it's not worked. Whatever it is the faceless men are trying to do, ultimately it doesn't work.
So the thing is, it's actually making her starkness come out even more. And killing Darian is a really great example of that, because I mean, it's cold-blooded murder.
Yeah.
But she is dressing it up as this is Stark justice. A Stark would have to bring him to justice. So I'm just going to do that.
And it's also, again, these wolves are getting stronger and braver. Mm-hmm. They fear no men. They're beginning to, have no fear of men whatsoever. And then you get this Arya chapter.
So Connie says that the wolf dreams are calling her back to her identity. If you have wolf blood, it is part of who you are. Mm. And Sunny says that I think they are trying to enhance her abilities. Connie remarks that the White Walkers, all first men, must die. And Barbara says the kindly man tells Arya that all acolytes get blinded, but usually further into the training. Mm. Yeah, I think it could be as simple as Arya is progressing way too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
She's disassociating herself from killing. She even thinks I have 30 things I could tell him.
Yeah.
She decides to tell him something she doesn't really need to tell him, unless she knows she's being followed. I'm guessing she's being followed.
And in a way, she's testing them.
Yeah.
As much as they're testing her, because she's like, how are they going to react when I tell them where these boots have come from and what I've done? Because the actual killing of Darian, it's very clever. It kind of takes place off page. You kind of know, because you just get the boots. Where would they have come from? Okay, so it's obvious, but you don't see her actually killing someone like you do later on in the Mercy chapter, which is clearly a progression.
It makes me wonder, like, Darian didn't do much. Like, I mean, he was an asshole, and they're all like she didn't have to make too many leaps to know that there was suffering going on because of his actions. But it won't take much for Arya to take you out. It really won't. And there's this new cartoon on Netflix which we watched yesterday, called Paradise PD, and there's a cop in it, and she has real anger management issues, and she'll tase you if you litter, and it's like she'll just the shit out of you for anything, jaywalking, anything, and takes great pride in putting people in the hospital. Like, it's just over the top. But I feel like that's what Arya is going to be. She's going to be like, hey, you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think I feel like her morality is just going to be completely screwed. It makes me wonder, like, if she ever meets, I mean, what would she do if she knew what John did to Gilly, I mean, like, what way will she judge moral decisions? It's scary.
There's a lot to uncover about Braavos, this city of secrets, bastard city of Essos that escaped the Dragon Lords who effectively enslaved them. There's a big history there that's related, I think, to there's an interconnection between the Iron Bank and the kind of strata of like classes, and you know, the fact that you get this difference between a whore and a courtesan.
Yes.
You know, you do get the sense of culture and history of Braavos is padded out a lot in this chapter. But I just thought, City of Secrets. So I think there's still quite a bit for us to uncover about the significance of Braavos and what kind of secrets may be uncovered later on in the story.
A hidden city for 100 years or 1,000 years
Hidden,
or 100
so,
years, is it?
So yes, for yeah, it wasn't 1,000, it was 100, and then a couple of 100 years before that again. That I think that there are quite a few hidden, possibly there are a few hidden characters in this chapter. So there's a few questions. Who is the Black Pearl? You know, descended from who? So going back to the lineage, because we get a full description of that. So you know, who might she be? And also, the sailor's wife is quite an interesting character. She's mentioned in the Sam chapter, in the gloaming chapter a few chapters back, but also we get her fleshed out a bit more. She seems, you know, everybody says there's a melancholy about her, so there's a backstory there. You know, is she a hidden character? She was the wife of, you know, her first true husband. She was married originally, so who, you know, there's there are tales that he was like, I don't know, lost at sea or whatever. So who do we know that's lost at sea? There's loads and loads of questions here. Also, another one is who's the waif? There's lots of theories that I've heard about this, ranging from Melisandre to you know, the daughter. I mean, she says here that she's the daughter of she's a true-born heir. So if she's the true-born heir,
well, she's not lying. She says she's not lying.
Yeah, she's like three-quarters of the story is true. Some of it's exaggerated. Some of it is this, that, and the other. But basically, I get the sense that the part that she's the true-born heir of an ancient house is true. So the way I'm thinking is true-born heir would only be Dornish, surely, wouldn't it? If she was like, she was supposed to have inherited something, but because she's a girl, so if she was the true-born heir, she was going to inherit something, then it would be Dornish. But I don't know, an ancient house.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe she is a Starfall. Who a Dane? Maybe she's a Dane.
Yeah, maybe. I wondered, was Jorah Mormont's ex somewhere in there in the mix as well? That's what I was thinking of.
Well, there's a few women missing throughout history, ranging from Tysha to Jorah's to Joanna Lannister to you know, Ashara Dane. You know, there's lots of missing women. But Braavos is a city of secrets, and there are some characters in this chapter that have got questionable origins, I would say. It throws up lots of questions.
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff with the poisons in this chapter, we get a lot of nods to Jaqen, but also like what may have happened with Tywin and Joffrey. So yeah, it throws up more questions and answers at the same time, but more questions than answers. The stuff about the poisons and what needs to be dissolved.
Poisons, Dornish. Could she be a sand snake, or could she be, you know, I mean, the Tears of Lys, again, there's that connection to Tywin's death. You know, it rots a man from the inside out, and it seems like that's what was happening to Tywin, and that was potentially the cause of some sort of poisoning. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, the most troubling thing is how easily Arya murders at this stage. And her moral compass might be a little bit off. But yeah, that's all I had for Cat of the Canals.
Yes, me too.
I'm still going to wear this t-shirt, even though we're finished, Cat.
Yeah.
But yeah, so next week it is Sam 4 to Cersei 9. It's our second last week at Feast. And yeah, so Claire, have a great birthday.
Oh, thank you very much. I was just going to say we get 2 Cersei chapters.
Oh, great.
And the big one is actually the last one, which is in the last week. So we've got 3 more to the end of the book. We've got 3 more Cersei chapters. And
then we have one in Dance. Isn't that right? One Cersei.
Yeah, I think we've got a few in Dance.
Oh, do we? Ah, okay.
Or maybe that her incarceration just felt like a lot longer than it actually was.
No, maybe I wrote that down wrong. I have to do up the schedule because we're going to go straight into Dance. So, I should have mentioned as well, while Arya's having these really strong warging dreams at this point in Feast, Jon is also having really strong warging dreams at this point in Dance. So they're kind of in tandem with one another. Their warging abilities are getting stronger.
Yeah.
Sure. But anyway, that's it. Thanks so much to everybody in the chat for joining us. And yeah, we will make sure to go check out Johnny's streams during the week and Mackenzie's and all that. So thanks so much. And thanks, Claire. Have a brilliant birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone. See you next week.
Bye.